Okay, I'm going to go over units 1.18 and all the way through 1.121, I believe. All right, so I want to do this relatively quickly. Observations, we guys went through this. I'm going to keep it real simple. An observation is any information that's gathered with your senses. And we know what our senses are, right? We've known that since probably elementary school. Your senses include your vision, so sight and hearing and touch and smell and taste. Okay? So that's how you gather that information is using your senses. They go through this. You can read more about this. Then they talk about how you can use different pieces of equipment, microscopes, telescopes, thermometers to gather, to help with your observation and to gather evidence. That's it. At the bottom, I would look always at the summary. It gathers with your senses, and then observations raise questions. And then when you look at something and you observe it, then you attempt to try to explain what you just observed by gathering more evidence. Okay, so that is unit 1.18. And then, of course, you're going to, if I can move can I move this? No, I can't move this. Can I move that? No. All right. At the very bottom here, there's a practice. Remember, you do this practice here. You got to get 10 questions correct. And then after you get the 10 questions correct, up here will be a turn in button. Click on that to submit it, of course, and then do the same thing. Go on to Google Classroom. All right, so that's 1.18. 1.19 is hypothesis, and we've talked about what a hypothesis is. They say that it's defined as an educated guess. I like more along the lines of it's an educated explanation. All right, I don't like the word guess, but I understand why they use it. Okay, now a scientific hypothesis must meet two criteria. The two criteria, and we've talked about this now, it's got to be testable. So the example with my brownies is I said I added an extra egg, it would make the brownies more moist. Can I test that? Sure, we were able to test that. Also, the second part is a scientific hypothesis must be falsifiable, meaning if it's false, can it be proven false? Okay, it doesn't have to be proven false, but if it is false, can that be proven? And my criteria or my brownie hypothesis met those two criteria. They go into a little more detail here about, when it's testable and when it's falsifiable. And I'll let you read that on your own. So here's the summary, same thing. Hypothesis, educated guess or educated explanation, tested with observations, and falsified if it really is false. I'll click that, and then they go through a little bit more. Then you can watch this video, and once again, down here, do your practice and submit, turn in and submit, do both. Okay, let's go to the next one, 1.20. This is experiment. We've gone through this. We talked about a controlled experiment. Remember, everything is the same except for just one variable. So experiment is a controlled scientific study of specified variables. Now, the key is the variable that you're going to test. That is called the manipulated variable. It's also called the independent variable. Okay, and they mention that right there. And then depending on, to figure out if the manipulated variable had an effect, you look at the responding variable. So it responds to the manipulated variable. And the responding variable helps you to determine, did the manipulated variable affect it? We also call that the dependent variable. Okay, so it's also called. So manipulated is also called the independent variable, and the responding variable is the same as the dependent variable. Remember this, though, there's only one independent variable, and there's only one dependent variable. And then all the ones that are the same for the both groups, remember what that's called? Those are called your controlled variables. These two videos I think are really quite humorous. I would like you to watch them. Hopefully they'll play for you. If they don't, we'll figure that out. All right, so you'll have to let me know about that. And then they go down here, controlled variables, we said are the ones that are exactly the same for both groups, for both the experimental group and the control group. Remember, there's those two groups, experimental, control. The experimental group is the one that will receive the manipulated variable. The control group does not. They go down here, they talk about controlled variables, and then this is quite funny. So here's your summary, pretty much what I have up here. Experiment, it's controlled study. There's two variables, manipulated and responding, and then you also have your controlled variables that are the same for both sides, for both groups, experimental and control. Once again, do your practice. There you go. Let's go to the last one. This is field study. Some kids don't know what it means to be a field study. That's you're actually out there. A lot of times you can do experiments in the lab setting, fine, but oftentimes it doesn't lend itself to that. So you have to be out in the field, so that means like in the location, if that makes any sense. So they go through it down here, kind of what that means to be in the field. And they give an example of how it's, you want to get, if you're going to be looking at river pollution, you need to be collecting samples of water from the river. You're not going to recreate that in a lab setting if you can actually be in that actual location in the field study. They go through this with water pollution. You can read through that. So here's the key point. In a field study, the scientist gathers evidence in the real world instead of in the lab. So it's actually out there in nature. It's investigating the environment, and they gave example of that. All right, and then you can watch this video. This pretty good. All right, complete the practice. Once again, you're going to get 10 correct, and then you come back up here. Remember, click the turn in button, the red turn in button, and then go on to Classroom, Google Classroom, mark done, and you'll be up to par. All right, so hopefully that helps, and we'll talk later.